I am here today to tell you about an experiment, a new type of classroom that I've been developing with my students at Durham College, and I think you're going to be interested in this, or I certainly hope you are. I've been blessed at Durham College lately to have a college that supports innovation, is really doing a push to help its faculty think about how to develop courses that really better reflect the challenges that young people are facing as we have now entered a new century. We've entered a new millennium. There are a lot of complicated problems and issues and opportunities for young people. And so I was given the freedom to develop courses. And in a moment, I'm going to tell you something about an opportunity that has come out of these courses. Two of the courses look at human history and future. One is called A Short History of the World, and the other is called Humanity's Destiny. And they both look at where are we today as human beings, how did we get here, and where are we going? And I have noticed something, and I'll start by explaining it this way. You're looking at a globe that I often take to my classes, and I like to carry it through the hallway, kind of like a basketball. It's really fun, and always a student will say at some point when they see me walking, "You have the world in your hand." And I say, of course, for the moment, I do. We do. And then when I walk into the classes, I've noticed that they're quite full. And I have started to realize that young people today are anxious, are hungry to learn about how to think about the world as a whole. And this has presented a real opportunity in education that my students and I, have created an experiment around. And that's what I'm going to tell you today, because I believe that this experiment, as it's incubating, could give us the possibility to create an entirely new classroom for many countries. Now, by way of setting up this experiment a little bit more, I'd like to build before I show it to you. When we started this experiment, I used to bring a map of the world to the Short History of the World classes, and I would carry it on my shoulders, but it got too heavy, and I also got a bruise on my shoulder, so I decided I'm not going to do that anymore. But during some of those early classes, when we were beginning to contact other students from around the world, we would write down the names of the students and some of the issues that we were discussing, and I love some of these names. They're very local. There's Anwina from India, Madeline from Paris, Tudor from Wales, Brino from Brazil. And these names are so distinctly local. Dante, the great Italian poet, once said that to him, the world is like native country, like the sea is to the fish. And I think of these distinct names as being like little fish, different colored fish, swimming in this sort of big sea of this globalized world. Because in the conversations we started to have with these students in different countries, we started to look at these large global issues. For example, you'll see written on the board there, the morality has to improve. Our morality has to improve, or biodigesters. Does anyone know what a biodigester is? It's a kind of machine that's like the human stomach and can actually deposit waste more efficiently than other types of waste disposal systems. These were students who I could see are thinking very locally and very globally at the same time. And I began to see that there's a generation of students today, and they're right here, sitting among us, who are glocal thinkers. And that's what led to this experiment. It's called the Global Class. What you're looking at right now is a new type of classroom that does not exist anywhere in the world right now. I can tell you that for a fact because I've spoken at international conferences, and I've begun to build a network with my students with colleges and universities around the world. The idea is this. You're looking right now in the forefront of the screen at my students at Durham College, sitting in the lecture theater, my short history of the world students. There's a camera facing them, and if you look at the screen a little more closely, in the lower left-hand side of the screen, you will see the Durham College students on the screen. You will then see to their right students from India, and up above, students from South Korea, from the Korea Polytechnic Institute, and to their left, a guest from New York, and his name was Adolfo Doring, and he was a director of a documentary called Blind Spot. The idea that my students and I have created is that we can be doing these global classes all the time, and we have 3 different institutions from 3 different parts of the world, and 1 global thinker who interacts with the students. I think I should say this because it will make it clear for you what this is. It's almost like interactive TED, in the sense that you're bringing the speakers to the students of the world. You're allowing the students to interact with each other so they can get to see what each of them thinks about different issues that they share. And then the global thinker is kind of like the teacher of that class, and he interacts and even judges and tests what they're debating about. This is a winning format. I've seen it work with my students. They love it. And in a moment, I'm going to talk about the work that they've been doing. And I can tell you, I'm going to probably make a student feel very uncomfortable at the moment, because there's one student who did a wonderful piece as a result of this class, and she's sitting in the second row right now, and she didn't know I was going to say this. So I better not put her on the spot, okay? Now, let me show you some more about what this global class is. There's an online extension. We record the class, and then it allows for this kind of intercultural communication with a global thinker to be accessed by any class anywhere in the world. So they can either participate in a global class, or they can use this edited version of an actual global class as a resource for their own classes to explore what it means to be human in a world that is changing so much. This is what young people are faced with today, is how are they going to deal with the future increasingly, which is so interconnected. We have to give them the opportunity to explore this globalizing phenomenon in a way that is in real time, face-to-face. Not blogging, not by themselves, not in a cubicle somewhere at their desk, but together, real-time, live, face-to-face. And we've had about 10 of these kinds of global classes already, and they are really working. And I'm beginning to think, listening to my students who've been telling me what they think about this, we're onto something. For a global class to work, it has to be a class. It's not just a discussion. There's an actual lesson plan that we post online, that we work out together with the guest and the participating institutions. There are documentaries or books that the students will read, parts of books, in advance. That's all available on the Global Class website. And I've built the website with the students. And again, I come back to the students. I look at the students that I see in my classes, and generally speaking, I know sometimes there are difficult students, every teacher has them, but generally speaking, I am seeing young people who are very much engaged in this idea of how do we approach the future in this sort of interconnected world, and what does it mean to be human at a time when technology is actually beginning to pose questions around, could we be developing different kinds of intelligence that could replace us? Is there going to be Robo-Sapien? Who knows? These are great challenges, environmental challenges, social challenges, political challenges that young people are going to face. When I'm gone and buried, I need to leave a legacy for young people so that they can begin to solve these problems and have a better world. I think that's what we all want, is to leave our children and our grandchildren with something better. So, it's a class. It has a format. It has a structure that builds towards a conclusion in each class. It's not just a loose discussion. It builds towards some insight. But here's the part that I love to talk about the most. Think of the global class as the exchange part. Think of the assignments that the students do afterwards as the create part. Exchange and create. Exchange and create. This is the sort of philosophy behind the global class. On the website, we post a lot of the students' assignments that they do as a result of the global class. This is just one, and I'm going to tell you about it in a moment because it's a wonderful piece. Students are encouraged to do their assignments on glocal thinking in any medium that they like, whether it's a video, whether it's written, whether they want to do a presentation, whether they sketch something out. This is a multimedia generation. They should be able to express themselves in the way that they're comfortable, as long as the ideas in those assignments have real content and address what the global class is all about. So for a moment, I'm going to make a person feel uncomfortable here in this room. I won't mention her name. Okay, so is it okay? Yes, Bailey? Okay. She did not know, but I saw her from the corner of my eye, and I hoped she would come. Just to give you an example of what I think the global class can do in terms of inspiring students to reach further and to extend their horizons, Bailey was a student of mine in Short History of the World class. She came to me near the end of a semester, and she said she has a lot of work. Could she get an extension on her final assignment? Dilemma for a teacher. Should I give the student an extension? If I give her an extension, everyone has to get one. But I had a sense that she had a really good idea, and she did. And I gave her the extension, and in a week later, she produced a phenomenal video. What is the video about? You can see it on the global class, but it's called Rice and Water. And what Bailey wanted to do was understand and express what it means like to be dirt poor, to be an African or someone living in a rural part of China or South America, in the poorest part of the world, and understand what do they go through. And she did an experiment. She tried to live on a diet that the poorest of the poor live on, called rice and water, and she wanted to see how long she would last. And I'm not going to ruin the video. I'd like you to see it. But it ended up winning the Trent University Film Festival for what she did as a result of this. Bailey has great talent, as many other students do, but I think the global class kind of gave her a little bit of a kick. And in the end, she reached further than herself, and she could see what she's capable of. Take a look at this piece called The Great Dependency. It's a much smaller, more modest piece, but it really expresses the global vision behind the global class. Tyler Clark, a student, came to me and said he wants to show how dependent everybody seems to be today on things coming from different parts of the world. For example, in Oshawa, when you look at a car part that's made here, take a look at all the different parts that go into one car, and you'll see that that car is made all over the world. It's just one or two parts are or used to be made in Oshawa. I'll be careful what I say about GM, but nonetheless, you get my point. I hope. Tyler said to me, I make pizzas, and I'd like to show people that the pepperoni comes from one country, the mushrooms come from somewhere else, the onions come from here, and the rolling pin and the dough, they seem to come from somewhere else. And I'd like to show and follow how those different pieces of things, the elements that went to make this pizza, come together, so that in the end, when someone comes to buy a slice from me on the weekend, I'm giving them a slice of the world. I thought it was brilliant. And he did it. It's called The Great Dependency. It's an example of how everything local today has global connections, and everything global has local ramifications. We're living in this global world. My students understand that, and they want to express that. I have been very inspired by my students, and that's why I'm going further with the global class, because I believe that every class on Earth should have the opportunity to do their own global class, and that the global class website could be a forum where all of these classes could be put, so everyone in the world could have access to this kind of intercultural communication. My students have inspired me, but so has something else. This is a picture of the display board of newspapers at the Moffett Library on the Berkeley campus in California. And that's me standing at the end reading a newspaper and somebody else scratching their head, and my wife took this picture. We had gone to San Francisco to go hiking in the Redwoods, beautiful part of the world. This display board shows newspapers from 6 or 7 different countries, the front pages of those newspapers, the news of the day. And you can walk along that and look at, well, what are the people in Saudi Arabia today saying about Stephen Harper and his visit to the Middle East? What are the people in Palestine or Israel saying about Stephen Harper? What are the people in Washington or South Korea or China? All of these different places in the world have unique local perspectives on a global event. And this board, to me, encapsulates, to a large extent, what the global class is again. I was inspired by this board. In fact, I give students the opportunity to link to this platform on the global class so they can see these kinds of newspapers from around the world. But I was also inspired in San Francisco by the trees. Would you please clap if you've ever been to the Redwood forests in California? Would you please clap again if you liked what you saw? Probably, were you inspired? Probably. These are the largest trees in the world and among the oldest. They go back millions of years. And to give you a sense of the size of these trees, imagine 10 people locked hands and they still can't get around the trunk of one tree. These are magnificent. And to be able to walk through these redwoods on the way to the Pacific Ocean gives you a sense of the natural world in a way that is very inspiring. I began to think of something when I was walking the trails with my wife, who's a wonderful hiker, and she probably would have been way ahead of me, but she stopped to take this picture. I began to sense that we are at a kind of a crossroads with humanity. Some scholars today, poets, explorers, philosophers, and others, are talking about a new type of creature that we are called Homo colossus, that collectively, all 7 billion people of us on this planet are exerting such impact on nature that we're beginning to perhaps change nature. That we're at this point where we might end up creating something different for our future that God did not want. And when I looked at these trees, I thought how magnificent and big they are and how much they've given us, humanity, over the millennia. But now it seems to be we, the little kind of dumb but brilliant mammals that evolved into this powerful, sometimes very greedy creature. We might be the ones who end up becoming the giants, and the trees could end up becoming the little ones, or we could actually kill all of our trees. Do we want that kind of world? This is the world that young people are entering today. So I want to wrap up with something. Oops, I'm going to leave this here for a moment. These are my students. Some of the Short History of the World students who created the first global class with me. They understand what's lying ahead, more so than we, the older ones, do. They are hungry for this type of thinking, this kind of opportunity to engage with the rest of the world and their peers in different countries and global thinkers to understand how are we going to solve some of these problems and take opportunities from them so that we can have a better world. They know it. Well, what might that better world be? I can't leave here without presenting a solution. And I brought it with me. There are a lot of problems today. Young people know that. We don't want to overwhelm them with so many problems and so much baggage that in the end, we leave them with a world that's much worse. It has to be better. Václav Havel just died about 2 years ago. President of Czechoslovakia, he's a political dissident, a poet, fought against Soviet tyranny before the Soviet Union disappeared, thankfully, from history. He paid a price for it. He was in jail, but like Nelson Mandela, he was eventually released, and he became the first president of sort of modern Czechoslovakia. He wrote something for a magazine called The Futurist in 1995. He loved to think about the future. Listen to what he wrote. Yes, the only real hope of people today is probably a renewal of our certainty that we are rooted in the earth and at the same time the cosmos. This awareness endows us with the capacity for self-transcendence. Politicians at international forums may reiterate 1,000 times that the basis of the new world order must be respect for human rights, but it will mean nothing as long as this imperative does not derive from the respect for the miracle of being, the miracle of the universe, the miracle of nature, the miracle of our existence. Only someone who submits to the authority of the universal order and of creation, who values the right to be a part of it and a participant in it, can genuinely value himself and his neighbors and thus honor their rights as well. That's a way forward for young people. Thank you.